Okay, Neo fam, it's time for some brutal honesty. Let's talk about the stock price. And yes, I'm going to go there. I'm going to lead with the most recent data we have. This is, in fact, just March and April of 2025, but this is the FTD data that we've got, the white lines. And here is the point I want to show you. This level right here is 1 million shares that couldn't be located, that could have been used to manipulate share price or mess with the stock price and keep it down. The reason I'm showing you this is only March and April of 2025, but look at how many days there were with that level exceeded. More than 1 million shares that couldn't be located on a lot of these days. Now let's go back in time. The time frame where niostock made its big move from $3.50 to over $55. And in fact, this is a little bit bigger picture even than that. This is from about September of 2020 through March of 2022. And this is the only time within that time frame where there were over 1 million shares that couldn't be located on a single day. So the FTDs are way out of control now compared to how they were back during this time frame. Now, the stock price during this time frame moved up into the $20 and then into the 30s, 40s, 50s, even above $60, then came back down into the 40s, the 30s. Eventually, as more FTDs started coming back into the picture and trade volume dropped off, that's where the stock price has been slowly but surely taken down to its current levels. And I know people have gotten frustrated. Some within the community have gotten frustrated about me continuing to talk about this because they're like, well, what can we do? And I'll actually offer, I'm going to read a longer comment response that I gave here in just a second. So stick around for that. But coming back to the trade volume and why I've kept it on the ticker at the bottom of the screen, the three key short-term stock price indicators, trade volume. In this recent term, when we've had these spiked elevated levels of FTDs, we've only had a couple of days in the last months where NIO has traded over 100 million shares. So with sentiment being down and the trade volume being down, I believe it's much easier for the bad actors to control or even manipulate stock price. And that is why until we see a big shift or change in the trade volume on the daily side of things, I just don't expect us to have big moves to the upside, if that makes sense. So that's kind of what I'm waiting and watching for behind the scenes. I do want to offer this, and it's a lengthy comment. It's like a short novel, really. But let me offer this because I was asked, what can we do? And so here's my response to that. And it's one of the reasons I've tied a few different things in here to offer a little bit of why I continue to cover this. I just want to have awareness of what's going on. But with so many retail investors involved in NIO, my main goal is to help make them aware that this could be happening. While I realize some within the community get tired of hearing me talk about it, I believe few investors in NIO, including some of the institutional investors, the big money investors, even have awareness of this. I've seen high-level folks, and I give a couple of examples here specifically of folks who are apparently missing the reality that even while Alibaba, for example, is doing share buybacks, FTDs could represent naked shorting that is manipulating the stock price action in the short term. That's just one reason I keep speaking on it. And in addition, I have a small channel. I don't exactly get a lot of love from the YouTube algorithm. So that's also why I keep sort of bringing this up each time we get the latest data. What can we do about it? Raising awareness has been my main focus. The SEC doesn't seem to care. And even if someone has an airtight claim to take into court against the bad actors, those big money folks have legal teams and enough money to draw things out for years. Profitability for the company remains the most important thing in my view. Profitability has been important for other IDE companies like Tesla, who are heavily shorted, and the length of shorting with Tesla might have contributed. All right. And that's important, I think. The longer this goes on, the more it could actually contribute to a higher stock price, perhaps in the future, or if we see enormous moves by the stock ending up in like a short squeeze. And I offer here that NIO actually made a huge move, likely its own short squeeze, at a point well before it was profitable, which makes me believe it can do so again. Not why I am in the play, but also not something I will ignore or discount as a possibility. So that's the flip side of it, is the short term. It may be frustrating, but I'm just kind of thinking, okay, if there's a lot of this manipulation going on and, stock price control, could this actually end up being a long-term upside positive for the stock price? I do think it's possible. So on the one side, the apparent manipulative shorting, that could be represented by those FTDs is frustrating. But what if we look at it with a bigger picture view and consider the reality of the risk that these bad actors could be taking on by shorting or continuing to short NIO as they did with Tesla? The flip side is that of that shorter term frustration is that once NIO becomes profitable and crushes the short thesis, those shorts could get torched, or we could end up seeing big money chasing the stock price to the upside. And that would be really interesting. And it's kind of a point that I made in the recent video. My thinking with like Tesla investors, if they see NIO and if they end up coming in before the majority of Wall Street could actually end up chasing this thing. That's something that'd be interesting and fascinating to track moving forward. But back to my point here, therefore, my view, if I wish to be conservative with expectations, aligns the fundamental with profitability while allowing me more months to track data and trends. William Lee is very focused on full year profitability in 2026. That would mean full year profitability likely gets reported in March of 2027. It's May 2025 now, so NIO has almost 2 years to increase market awareness in China and abroad, ramp deliveries across all brands, especially in China, hit the goal of profitability, which should follow significant delivery ramp along with better margins. And during that entire time, I'll be able to watch the 3 short-term indicators to see if there are any changes along the way, like bigger trade volume on the daily side of things. I think that'll be the easiest thing for us to track. Simultaneously, 2 years allows time for the US and China to iron things out. There could be major positives if either big money flows back into Chinese stocks or Chinese EVs start making their entrance into the US market. My own longer term view has incorporated the 3 major growth phases for NIO: market awareness, profitability, and battery as a service. And that's with the NIO brand having done 1 million cumulative sales. NIO just hit 700,000. So by my own shorter term side of the big picture, with all 3 growth phases coming in, with the last one being 1 million NIO sales, that probably means a year beyond what William Lee has set for a goal of NIO with profitability. But that's just me. Wanted to share some of my unconventional thinking and part of why I just keep focused on researching, studying, learning, and trying to increase awareness for others along the way. There is a wild card here. If the US decides it wants more honest markets, it could crack down on naked shorting or change the rules on FTDs. I am not counting on this, but because DJT has been targeted with FTDs in the past, I also don't want to rule it out as a possibility. It would be nice if we could have more faith and trust in our markets and systems here in the USA. And that is my sort of short novel response to a comment about what can we do. Because for me, it's about increasing awareness, making, getting other folks aware so that they can recognize what may be going on. I do think that the most important thing for the company is profitability. And I think that will sort of take care of this short thesis on its own. But in the meantime, that gives me more time to continue studying, tracking things. And as I showed you before, I mean, it's pretty crazy when you see how many days back to back to back we have, these elevated FTDs with low trade volume compared to back at that time when NIO stock was much, much higher levels. The sentiment was better. The trade volume was much higher. So again, that's what I'm tracking, why I'm tracking it. I actually intended this video to be a short one, but I think it went on a little longer. So maybe I'll even create timestamps for it to make it a little more viewer friendly. So in any event, thanks for stopping by. I'll see y'all again very soon.